Welcome back. Here with RT. Now, the US has announced plans to maintain a peacekeeping group of 200 troops on Syrian soil beyond the planned withdrawal of Pentagon troops from the country this spring. The statement does come after a recent phone call between Trump and his Turkish counterpart, Recep Erdogan. The leaders discussed security in the region. There are currently some 2,000 American troops in Syria. In December, Trump announced the withdrawal of US forces there, but their pullout does now seem less than certain.
It should be formally announced sometime, probably next week, that we will have 100% of the caliphate. But I want to wait for the official word. I don't want to say it too early. We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. Now we've won. Time to give our brave warriors in Syria a warm welcome home.
You could, in that vacuum, see a resurgence of ISIS, see a resurgence of terror groups like Al-Qaeda.
We'll come back if we have to.
OK, well, let's get the thoughts now of international affairs commentator Jonathan Steele. He joins us from the UK. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. Some might ask, what is the point of keeping just 200 troops in Syria? I mean, how effective could they be?
Well, they're a tripwire, I think. I mean, the main problem is that the Turkish authorities, President Erdogan has threatened to move Turkish troops into the whole of the northern Syrian area to wipe out the Kurdish forces there, which he considers to be terrorist. I was talking actually yesterday in London to one of the Syrian Kurdish political leaders who was here on a visit to see the British government, and she was saying that the Kurds are willing to move their forces 5 kilometers back from the Syrian-Turkish border, provided there are peacekeepers or some international force in the buffer zone to protect them against the Turks.
So do you think...
we'll have to see. There are discussions going on in Washington about all this, and obviously with Moscow and with Erdogan, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Sure. I mean, this latest announcement did come after Trump spoke with Erdogan. Do you think it's a deal that they struck then?
No, I think it's too early to strike a deal. I think there, as I say, there are consultations going on involving the Syrian government in Damascus, Moscow, Turkey, Iran, which is part of the Astana process, and of course the United States and British and French forces who are there in a small capacity backing up the Americans.
There are many competing interests, aren't there, in Syria? Do you ever foresee a situation where there would be no US troops?
Well, I mean, Trump has said that they've defeated IS, and they have done militarily in the sense that they have almost no territory left. The last sliver of territory probably will fall next week, as Trump said. But that doesn't end the ISIS problem, because there are a huge number of former fighters and other sympathizers with IS who are perhaps willing to go underground, to form sleeper cells, to pop up in different parts of the world, particularly in Europe, maybe in Russia, maybe in North Africa, and carry out their terrorist attacks. So the ideology continues even if the territory has been lost.
Sure. Wouldn't the Syrian government, though, or the armed forces that they have, be enough to counter that problem?
Well, they might be, but as I say, this isn't just a military problem. It requires education, it requires de-radicalization, it requires jobs. I mean, one of the reasons why many of these young men join this group is economic. They have no work prospects, no jobs. They join IS and then they become radicalized afterwards. It's usually that way round. It's wrong to think that people are radical Islamists then join ISIS. It's often, particularly the ones who are local, the Iraqis and the Syrians, who are young, unemployed young men who then become radicalized once they've joined IS.
Sure, and we shouldn't forget all the thousands of radicalized Islamists that have come from Europe and the UK too.
Well, that's exactly right, and some of them have come back. Some of them have been put on trial and got sentences of 2 or 3 years. And then we have these cases of the so-called jihadi brides, like Shamama Begum, the teenage London girl who went out there at the age of 15 and now wants to come back and has had her British citizenship taken away.
Sure, it's a complicated situation, isn't it? Jonathan, always good to talk to you. We're going to have to leave it there. That was Jonathan Steele, International Affairs commentator. Thank you.